Last Friday, Jews in Australia woke up to the devastating news that the Adass Synagogue in Melbourne, one of the busiest synagogues in all of Australia, had been firebombed in the early hours of the morning. 2 people were inside the building at the time, and luckily they managed to escape, but it could have been a lot worse. The images of a burning synagogue in the heart of the Jewish community will leave a painful wound on the soul of our community, a wound that will not easily heal. How can it? It inevitably recalls the darkest moments in our history, including the Kristallnacht pogrom in 1938, when dozens of synagogues were also burned to the ground. There were unforgettable and iconic images of holy Jewish places collapsing in the flames of hatred. Yet, do you know what was the most shocking aspect of Friday's attack? It's that we weren't even surprised. Since October 7 last year, when Hamas launched its war on the people of Israel, Jew hatred has exploded around the world in record numbers of incidents, including intimidation and violence. And Australia has not been immune to this worldwide trend of hatred. Just last week, a report on anti-Semitism showed that since the October 7 attacks, incidents of Jew hatred had increased by a staggering 316%. And that's probably only a conservative figure, as many incidents go unreported. In the last month alone, we've seen an attack in the Sydney suburb of Woolwich, where cars were defaced with anti-Israel slogans. We've seen an Israeli tourist in Townsville being called a dirty, filthy effing Jew. And we've seen anti-Israel protests at the Great Synagogue in Sydney, where the only person moved on by police was a Jewish man accused of a breach of the peace when he unfurled an Israeli flag opposite the protesters. During the past 14 months, Jewish students have been made to feel unsafe on university campuses, where anti-Israel protest encampments sprung up. These protests were screaming genocidal slogans such as "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and also intimidating and preventing Jews from going to their classes. Some were even advised to study from home for their own safety. In February this year, the details of members of a WhatsApp group of Jewish creatives was doxed and leaked publicly, leading to harassment and intimidation. Now, while it's true the government has made some attempts in combating anti-Semitism, such as passing laws against doxing and the banning of the use of Nazi salutes and hate symbols, it's also true that the Jewish community largely feels that neither our political leaders nor our law enforcement officers have truly had our back. For instance, we cannot understand why the government appears unable to condemn anti-Semitism without also talking about Islamophobia, even though the number of anti-Semitic incidents dwarf the number of Islamophobia incidents. Since October 7, Islamophobia has not exploded in the way anti-Semitism has. This attempt at being even-handed is rooted in political ideology, not reality. That's why the government felt it had to appoint a special envoy to combat Islamophobia, in the same way it appointed a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism. Prime Minister Albanese did condemn the attack at Adass and promised our counter-terrorist agencies would assist with finding the perpetrators. Yet many in the community will find this too little, too late, with the government's actions not living up to these words. In incident after incident, law enforcement has been moving Jews away from public areas for their own safety, rather than confronting the mobs over their potential or actual violence. We saw this on October 9 when anti-Israel demonstrators at the Sydney Opera House shouted, "F the Jews," and "Where are the Jews?" It happened when anti-Israel demonstrators descended on Melbourne's Jewish community last November. And it happened when visiting families of Israeli hostages kidnapped by Hamas were further traumatized when another anti-Israel mob took over their hotel lobby. Just last Wednesday, it happened again when these demonstrators protested outside the Great Synagogue in Sydney. Meanwhile, police investigations into the blatantly anti-Semitic sermons that have come out of some mosques always conclude with the same result: no charges. The Jewish community in Australia is angry at the treatment it's been receiving from the leaders of this country. It is tired and frustrated and upset and disgusted at what's been happening on the streets of our cities. And it feels abandoned. It has been ringing the warning bells about this increasing wave of hatred and the woeful and inadequate response by authorities and government leaders for 14 long months. So what happened at Adass Synagogue on Friday appalled us and it sickened us, but it did not surprise us.